Hello and welcome to another episode of Veterans to Success, the podcast where I get to speak to seemingly ordinary people who have extraordinary stories. And today I've got with me Thomas Burgess. Tom, how are you doing, bud?
I'm very well, Joe. How are you, mate?
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm really well. Thanks for asking. And I'm glad you're well. And you know the score, right? We've had a good chat before we started today. There's no big fanfare for the common man or common woman. We go straight in, we do a reveal. And as we're going along, you tell your amazing story and unveil what you did before the military, what you did in, and now what you're doing. Is that okay?
Yeah, tips up. Let's start.
Fabulous. Okay, so let's dive straight in. So tell me a bit about your time before the military, you know, when you were a wee lad, a young lad, and what you were doing and what actually clicked where you thought, military sounds all right.
Well, I'm a Londoner born and bred, and hail from a little suburban area called Wandsworth, south of the river.
I know that.
And yeah, urban city really. My mum and dad had I think I was a bit of a surprise. I'll just say that they got married very around about the same time, if you know what I mean.
A nice surprise, of course.
A nice surprise. That's what they told me. But you know, they had a little flat in Wandsworth, and they did the very best they could. And Mum had a couple of jobs, and my dad was a black cab driver. Working all hours that he could, driving around the streets of London earning a wage. And I remember, my brother coming along. Got a younger brother, who's 2 years old. We went to school. We had mates. We played football, and then I don't know. Then something happened. We moved out of Wandsworth towards Worcester Park, which is a little bit further down the A3. And that change of area, that change of school for me, signaled a little bit of a change. And I myself went a little bit off the rails and was, I wouldn't say I was a naughty kid, but I certainly wasn't, an angel. I wasn't a prefect, I'll say that much.
Yeah, your teacher might have said you were a naughty kid, but you'd never say that, of course.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. But I did find myself in detention once or twice. That's just
right. So, and that's interesting. I mean, I don't want to dwell on that. The thing is, so that move, right, unsettled you then, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a few other elements around that period as well, that certainly did cause let's say an adverse childhood experience, which then sets the thing that we're going to talk about later up. But that things happened as a kid, which my child mind at the time didn't quite know how to process, and therefore, I'm then looking at the adults around me doing these things, and the kids and the teachers that are a little bit older than me doing these things that are imprinting on my child brain, hadn't grown up yet, and I'm learning what to do as an adult growing up. But secondary school for me, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, young, impressionable, eager to please, wanted to be liked, hanging in and around the wrong crowd and doing things in order to get some attention,
and be accepted, maybe.
Yeah, fend off the bullies that was absolutely wreaking havoc in my life. And it's a big pattern, what we're saying here, and I'm sure it will be quite familiar to others out there listening, that dysfunctional home, trouble at school, bullied, then grows up to join the military.
And like, where'd you go when you get that? Because I remember, similar to you, and I think we talked about this, I remember being bullied at
Mm,
school when I was a young lad by
mm,
two twins that were older than me, and I thought, wow, so this is life, is it?
mm,
Yeah, and sometimes you just don't know where to turn, do you?
mm. No, and you know that question that you're hovering on there. So this is it. Is this what I've got? You know, some would say, you know, that would be my first doubt or question around the word suicide. As a teenager, you know, if this is what I've got to look forward to, if this has been this 5 year period of my life in secondary school that's been bloody awful, um, what's the rest of my life going to look like? And that's just where this question came hovering around. And then I remember being in the school assembly at sort of like age 12 and a half, 13, and the on secondary school grounds there was an air training corps uh, squadron, a hut, and it was this grey building with a plaque outside, green fence around it. No one could go in, and it had this sort of like air of secrecy about it. And it's
Yeah,
sort of like, what's on the other side of those doors? And I remember like imagining what was inside that building quite a lot as a kid. And then one day there was an RAF Regiment and Air Training Corps presentation team turned up at the school, and they gave a bit of a demo. Here's a helmet, here's a rifle, all those things. But just telling this story of what could be life after school.
yeah,
And 12 and a half years old, that was it. I was like, that's where I'm going. So I I pestered my mum and dad to let me go to ATC, and join up to be a cadet. But I was still 6 months too early. I was too young, so I had to wait. But the air cadets gave me my first directional, bearing, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, without that, and no disrespect to any other jobs out there, but I have no idea what I would have done. I would have probably gone into retail, or I have no idea what I'd have done. I certainly know the crowd I was hanging around with. Um, Most of them are in the nick now through
Yeah.
robbery, drugs, criminality.
And
That's where.
that's yeah, and that's interesting because I remember similar to you. I always used to walk past the Air Cadets, but it was at the top end of Widnes, like my hometown. But to get there, I'd go past the Army Cadets, and the Army Cadets won actually. But I mean, I always wondered what direction my life would have taken. And like you, I remember shortly after I joined the army, one of the people that I didn't actually knock about with him, but I knocked around in the same area. He was shot, and
Mm,
I thought, wow, that's
yeah,
that's interesting. In
yeah.
fact, I didn't think it was interesting at the time. It wasn't a word I used to describe it, but I thought, wow, yeah,
And you know, I was very lucky, and I think that we're all capable of choices, no matter what age we are. We all know what's right and what's wrong, right? You know, from the second you can walk to make a choice to go and put a biscuit in a DVD player, you kind of know, right? Well, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to upset mum. But you do it
yeah, yeah.
anyway. But I knew at 13 that I was in a pickle, for want of a better word. Uh, I was making a life decision. I knew that. And whether I had the language to actually voice that and say it at the time, I don't know. But looking back, I know that I was making a life decision to get myself away from and put myself in a different box, you know,
Yeah.
life. You know, the box we find ourselves in presents the problems that we have in that box. So if you put yourself in a different box, different problems. I knew I was moving from one box to another. Um, and
And you know the boxes right. It's interesting. Yeah, I like the way you use the box analogy. So would it be, I'm putting words in your mouth, going from, apart from your home life and parents who you love dearly and your younger brother, would it have been going from a life of chaos and disruption into something that had more regimentation or discipline or more certainty, I suppose?
If I said the word dysfunction, you know, that accurately describes the box. There's, yeah, alcohol was running around rife as a kid. My my father walked out on us as a family and came back, and you know, there was that taboo subject of we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
That's still not really been talked about. I'm happy that Dad came back, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
And he's a good father, and you know, I look up to him in that
And we've
respect.
talked about that, haven't we? And I
Yeah,
know I can see by the joy in your face that that relationship means a lot. Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. He's a fantastic man, and a lot of the things I do now as an adult are as a direct result of his, you know, guidance and teaching. You know, and the dysfunctional element of it wasn't anyone's fault either. It was just life. You know,
Yeah.
it's just the things that happen because we of the boxes we find ourselves in. You know, so I wouldn't change my growing up. I certainly wouldn't. And you know, I'm grateful to my parents for the effort that they put in to bring up my brother and I
Yeah.
into the men that we are now. So.
And it's a tough job being a parent. It's a,
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't say I know because my wife and I we're trying for kids at the moment. We're on our fourth round of IVF,
right.
and
Okay.
we're about to kick that off. So, you know, that I mean, that's bloody hell. That's a whole different level of
Yeah.
effort.
That's well. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
don't get a handbook, do you? You know, this is what you do, and this is how you react to that. So I suppose, yeah. So you've had a childhood that's been dysfunctional in your words.
Mm.
So at 13, you decide, right, RAF.
Yeah.
You were sweet talked by the recruitment guys,
Yeah.
or they give you such an appealing offer that you had to find out more. So when
Mm.
was it that you said, right, I've had enough? Stuff this for the game of soldiers or sailors or airmen and airwomen. I've had it. I'm going.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much straight away. I remember being pretty proud of having the you know, the ATC uniform on me, and I consider that really is like the start of service life. I remember talking to my granddad about it around about the same time, and he gave me you know, his opinion on the military. He was a naval frogman, um, boxer, played cricket. Um, he was very guarded about what he said around D-Day and Market Garden.
Mm,
Um, and you know, he took those stories to the grave. But
yeah,
you know, and we'll never find out. And that's okay. That's his choice. But I I asked my dad at 17 to join the RAF regiment. I knew that was where I wanted to go. 9/11 had a massive part to play in my this like confirmation of decision. You know,
yeah,
I think it's the first time, apart from, you know, Northern Ireland and the bombings around London, it's the first time I felt like a real want to get up and go and fight for my country. Um, Northern Ireland was, you know, evident because of where we lived in Wandsworth, and my dad being a cab driver. There was always that threat of dad not coming home from a bombing in town. That's something I
yeah, yeah.
remember. But I remember 9/11, then planes spanking in, and thinking like, let's go. Um, yeah, definitely a massive decision, and played a big part in mine, and I'm sure a lot of other men and women's lives to join up and put the name down on the line.
Good. So that was a real driver for you. So you joined in early noughties, didn't you? 2003, was it?
That's it. Yep. Yeah,
And
June 03.
yeah, and when you got there, what happened and how were you greeted? I mean, I don't suppose it was anything like "I'm your mother" now. What sort of greeting did you get?
So I was 24 hours late for my day one on basic training.
Well done.
That's, you know, that's a story there. I mean, the AFCO gave me my times and papers and everything to join up and go and report for duty. They put the wrong date, 1 day late on it. So literally the night before, or proposed night that I was going to, you know, get on the train and head to Bury St Edmunds, I get this, we're going out for dinner as a family, like the final dinner meal, you know, the last supper.
The Last Supper, yeah, of course.
And Corporal Jones, who's my my full screw on basics, goes, "Yeah, well, you didn't want to turn up for day one basic training then?" I was like, "Sorry, Corporal, like what?" Like massive flap ensued. I said, "No, I've been given the wrong dates," and I sent him, you know, the email and the confirmation, and no, I promise you, I'm turning up tomorrow at the reported time. He says, no, you need to get here now. So that was you know, all hands to the pump to get me from Worcester Park, Surrey, to Bury St Edmunds. I think I got there, you know, about 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night.
Oh, well done.
So it was no, I'm there. But that was like the first, you know, hiccup really of the career. But you know, they didn't hold it against me. It was a genuine cock up on AFCO London, not my fault. And the fact that I was there within the quickest possible time was, it kind of made it all good. But you know, and I tested the next day at 9:15. You know, can't say I remember the words for word, but I remember the smell of the, you know, the the wood decking in that room, and you know, the guys lined up and, you know, attesting to the Queen. Mom was all up on the wall there, Corporal Jones staring you dead in the eye. You know, a proud moment, and I knew that it's, you know, it all of that had been pushed to the side now, and there was something new for me to get stuck into.
So that was a proud day for you, and imagine your family as well. And I know you had a lot of respect for your granddad as well, so he would have been proud. So you're training, what are you thinking now? Because you've got to switch totally from people who were bullying you, and now you're going to get a different sort of challenge, but you've got a sense of belonging now. And I know you've got to drive to sort of say, do one to the bullies, and I'll show you sort of mentality, isn't it?
If I'm absolutely honest with you, it was like being back at the playground. It was being back in that same environment of bullying as a kid, except now there's almost a permission for violence. if that, not that it was that way, but there was, you know, you're a man now, you know, stand up for yourself. Whereas as a young kid at school, you know, you don't, the teachers, violence is not, it was a different thing. I'm growing up to be a soldier, so you do look after yourself. But you know, that thing never really, on basics, didn't need to come out. It was getting on to squadron after basic training, where the older, the long tooth soldiers, the guys that have been in quite a long time, you know, pushing the young LACs about that. that's just that's the time. And if I'm once again honest with you, I think it's required to make sure that the guys and girls walking through the doors know exactly what world they're in. You know, this is the box you find yourself in. You need to be prepared to stand up and protect yourself, you know, and follow orders, follow my direction. Do not bump your gums, because we won't stand for it. When we tell you to do something, you do something. You don't need to know why. You need to know the fact that I've asked you to do something. Do it. You know, that servant leadership it needs to be slapped into you for that first time, second time maybe, because if you start questioning, that's where the whole machine drops down to a certain
because the reaction's got to be instant, because people's lives depend on it. Your comrades. If you don't do something and move straight away, and I get that, and I know that in today's society, I appreciate that the world is changing. The fact is, though, that there are conditions where you need to have a thought pattern that's structured a little bit different, don't you?
I think the current world as it is right now is in a really good spot. But I also think it won't take long for those people that are saying no to war and all of those things, if they're coming over the border, you know, those people will need to step up, and it won't take long for them to do that. You know, we are as animals capable of great violence and self-defense. And once you start stripping away those comforts and turn off the electricity in the waters, and take away the Andrex toilet paper from the shelves you watch those people start eating people. It'll happen, and that's the scary thing about humanity. Because
there's been some interesting stories about, and I know the way that the mind is affected when you're out in survival mode, and it's not looking great, and you're wondering, right, okay, so literally, where am I going to get the next meal from? Like, not looking in the fridge and maybe, oh, that's not quite right, but this is where there's nothing.
To segue back into basic training, I think the veteran community, if that should happen, the veteran community will be not Dad's army, but they'll be the people that the next door neighbors will step to go, oh, we need help. That they will be that sort of like home guard leadership in neighborhood groups, because they know what it's like to just live out of a Bergen with nothing. Maybe some of them have been and done a bit of bushcraft, so they can step up and do that survival stuff and teach, you know. So we find ourselves as the warriors in the garden analogy, and not to be the gardener in the war. So it's military service gives us so much more than a certificate and a pin at the end of our service. It gives us that foundational knowledge that people you can't go and buy. It's slapped into you. It's in the pores, it's in the grain of your skin, because you have to live it. You can't teach that on a 2-week course or
no. I know it's ingrained, isn't it? It's a cultural thing, and we're going to be moving on to how does your skills from the military help you transition and be used for employers in Civvy Street. The fact is that whenever I see a crisis and I watch what's going on, I know who are ex-military or who are military just by watching the reactions and the way they deal with it. Not that I'm sitting back like doing nothing and just watching. I mean, because you just got a condor moment. It's that I'm just actually analysing what's going on as well as getting hands on. So So tell me as much or as little as you want to about your RAF career, because I know people often think RAF or pen pusher and stays in a hotel all the time, because we used to take the mick. But you've done a little bit different than that, haven't you?
Yeah, I think so. And the, to not sit here and tell war stories, because really my career was distinctly average, with elements of, you know, craziness thrown into the mix. Um, I talk to a lot of veterans now, and I do a lot of networking, and I'm happy to talk to anyone and everyone
Yeah,
about my service. But I get back like, oh, I did a tour at this year, and that was it. And even the old and bold, that like Northern Ireland, we did like a 6-week detachment over to there, and I'm like, Christ, actually, you know, the RAF Reg, no matter what anyone thinks about them, us, the tempo of operations that we went through, as a regiment,
yeah,
was extraordinary, you know. And whether you know, anyone wants to write the graffiti on the side of the Portaloo of Naffy Warrior,
yeah,
great, love it. I heard it all before. But there becomes this. Here's the deal: when you're out and you are patrolling that same ground all of the time, that comfort sort of niggles in, and you then
yeah,
become complacent, and that's when something happens. So you end up being in this continuous tension of something's coming around the corner all the time, and that then sort of sets your internal threat meter.
yeah.
Okay. um and like I
And
say,
now we're talking about third tour in Iraq, really, and the relentlessness of it.
yeah, so first, second, third tour in Iraq, Basra Cobb. You know, the 2007 tour was, I mean, every single tour of Iraq for myself personally was very different from the other.
Mm.
In the threat from EFP in the second tour wasn't in the third, because now it was a completely different threat. The IDF threat on camp was, it's horrible. You
Yeah.
know, sound waves
Uh,
of 20 to 30
and
rockets a day.
IDF and EFP, in case someone doesn't understand that.
Hear me. So EFP, explosively formed projectile.
Yeah,
So an IED at the side of the road, where it sends a metal slug through the side of the wagon, can take out armor. And there we are driving around in soft top Land Rovers.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Which is a great bit of kit, really, for that.
Bulletproof, right? Um, but and then IDF being indirect fire,
Yeah,
Chinese made 107 mil rockets, or 122, for a bit more range, and these guys knew our AO, they knew our lines where we couldn't cross over because of permissions, etc.
mm,
And they was banking them up just literally the other side of the road, where we had to wait and call in for permission, and that. So it was a very, very different tour.
mm,
But and that's where I experienced loss, for the first time, during service, with the death of, you know, guys in rocket attacks, and it was happening around us.
yeah,
And that's where I personally I was so close to death myself. It was a choice, you know, to turn left or right, and it was, if I'd have gone left, it was a dead. You know, I wouldn't be here. That was just one
right.
event.
Well,
But
thankfully you didn't. You went right. You went.
thankfully, and then I had an argument with my sergeant, and I got booted off a B flight, to support weapons as a driver. Demoted from 2IC down to driver. Worst thing in the world at the time. However, 2 weeks after I was moved from B flight to Soggies, a rocket came in and literally landed 2 meters away from my old bed space.
Wow.
I would have been dead then as well. And that rocket attack, you know, killed my friends, and
That's
I suffered
mm,
for that
mm.
for a long time, up
A-
until
and
maybe only last year.
so last year, and we'll come on to that as well a bit later on how you dealt with that. So, and the other thing as well was, which which I found extraordinary, right? You could be in a camp, right, which is heavily guarded, right? You've got 24/7 guards, and yet you choose to sleep where?
Well, I mean, so part of my instantaneous trauma response was, I'm not taking my helmet and body armor off. It's on. It stays on. It's not a hardship for me. It's staying on. And I wouldn't sleep on camp.
Right.
So I'd stay awake. But when we went off on our Tesserall patrols, that's where I'd catch my Zeds. You know, obviously with buddy, not sleeping on the patrol, etc. But
Yeah,
we'd
yeah,
harbour up, and that's where I'd catch my best sleep off camp. But you know, it was billiard flat desert, nothing really going on. It was much safer
yeah.
um, out there. But yeah, sleep for me ever since has been one of caution,
Right.
and you know, it's something I've had to deal with in terms of PTSD. Let's call it what it is, eh?
Yeah,
Post-traumatic stress
yeah, yeah.
disorder, as a result of that specific event. And the language I had within myself around that event was, I should have died on that tour.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I didn't value my life thereafter.
Mm,
It's only recently where I've changed the narrative, and my thinking around it is, I'm very lucky to be alive,
yeah.
and
Uh,
I survived.
and that's similar to like the imposter syndrome, isn't it? Or the guilt, the feeling of guilt. It should have been me, you know. And I hear that so often, you know.
Mm.
If only, and sometimes, and if you're listening, by the way, and this is striking you particularly hard, make sure, because we're going to tell you what you can do a bit later, make sure you confide in someone, because we are talking about some tough stuff in this episode. And just make sure you reach out and ask for help, because asking for help isn't being a coward. Asking for help is really strong, actually. It's brave
Yeah,
to ask for help, isn't it?
takes an incredible amount of courage to ask for help. And I'm sat here now with um, with a tremendous amount of unease going on inside me. I can feel my pulse
Mm,
going up. Yeah, I'm talking about
yeah,
something very emotive.
yeah,
I feel I have a good level of control over them. I can ground quite easily. And, you know, for others that are just starting or just coming into this awareness of what PTSD, and maybe, just maybe, they haven't been honest with themselves about where
yeah.
they are
Mm,
emotionally at this stage, because of the, I'm in the military,
yeah,
or the
yeah,
courage, or, you know, I'm one of the lads or lasses. You know, people are all on the same journey. There's just different positions um, in that drift. But yeah, I'm always happy to have a chat with anyone, and I do regularly with some mates I serve with.
and we're definitely going to come onto that, because I remember having so many chats with friends of mine, because I'm a little bit older, as you can see, and Kosovo. I mean, there was Northern Ireland, but Kosovo, the Serbs, and the Kosovans, and all that was going on, and there were some horrendous things that happened there.
Mm.
And I remember having chats with mates of mine, and you know, there were man mountains, but you know, at the end of the day, we're all human. Right?
I mean, you shut your eyes, you can't see the human that's in front of you, but the voice and the story and all of that emotion can come through just in the voice. You know, and what do we want? We as human beings, we need connection with another human being. We need to share that story, and it needs to be witnessed, that grief. But if the individual is not ready to give that up and access that, then it's bottled. It causes this contortion in the soul, you know.
And it's like that film. I always say to people, watch Frozen, let it go. Sometimes it's easier than others, and some of the work that I do, and I know we're going to be talking about that, but in just a few minutes. So, so you've had what could quite easily be categorized as a bit tough. It's not gone exactly to plan, and with your younger days when you were having a relationship with alcohol and maybe other substances, and then you're now in a military situation where you've been through 3 tours of Iraq, some relentless bombardment by projectiles, you know, IEDs, everything and anything that you can, and you've had the sad loss of close friends as well. So now, when is it that you just say, right, I've had enough, I'm done?
Well, so at the end of that 2007 tour, I was like, you know, I've had enough of the military. I'm getting out, and I was sat with my new boss on support weapons, Tim Taylor, really, really, really good man, top human. He says, look, why don't we don't do anything harsh. Don't just jump out of the military. Let's get you back. Let's get you into a nice quiet post somewhere, and let's just do some work and do a bit of healing, because you know it's been tough. Great leadership from that man, and I still talk with him now. And you know, I then returned back to the UK, went to a training post as an SAC young boy, you know, filling up brew kits and helping the corporals with their lesson plans for pre-deployment training for the rest of the Air Force. And that's where my leadership training kind of started there. Wasn't on tour. I was looking at these other corporals teach and present and, you know, impart knowledge, and that I kind of wanted a bit of that. So that was my turnaround point there. A further 3 tours of Op Herrick as well ensued thereafter. I promoted to corporal in that post, and I volunteered for parachute duties at 2 Squadron RAF Regiment, and I was fortunate enough to be posted there as a corporal on, and you know, had 3 fantastic tours with you know, a bunch of professionals and a set of wings on my arm as well. So really, because of that conversation with Tim Taylor, I'm out, I'm getting out. Like that emotional response to this horrible thing that happened in 2007. No, mate, look, let's think about this. You know, coached me into a better decision. I then continued on with what was actually a pretty good career and life choice. But that's the story. That's what I'll tell people, really, underneath all of that as well. Here's the thing underneath all of that. I'm still in massive denial about this thing called suicide that I hadn't really had the language about. And I was numbing the hell out of my body and my brain with cigarettes and alcohol. I was smoking and I was drinking like it was going out of fashion. And I was also doing a lot of exercise to counter the negative effects of those 2 things. I was an extremely fit smoker and an extremely fit drinker.
Yeah.
You know, I am an alcoholic, and I am an addict. More specifically, I'm an addict to process and chemical addiction. And you know, that there is something I have to be aware of every single day. Too much having the balance one way kills things off, and it's not cool. I can dip in, I can go and have a marathon, train for that marathon, but I've got to come back afterwards, or I can have a non-alcoholic Guinness. Amazing bit of kit, by the way. I love Guinness. I missed it, and
Right.
then you know, 0.0 Guinness. Yes, thank you very
Oh,
much.
that's great, isn't it? Yeah. Wow.
So I've got this little balance with that now, but it creeps back in real quick, and it's something that I will have to be aware of for the rest of my life.
And I remember when I was at Brompton Barracks training as a plumber and pipe fitter of all things, because we're Royal Engineers, so we get an artisan trade as well. And I was sent to the off license. We were having a stomp night, you know, the disco in camp. And I went to the off license, came back, and we're having a drink in the room. We're not supposed to, I know, but yeah, we're having a drink in the room, and we start to get happier and happier. And you know, we're having a great laugh, and we thought, wow, this is great beer. And then we looked at it, and it was 0%. And you know, the fact that we thought it was alcohol just raised our levels and made us feel happier. So isn't that interesting that it's psychology, the way that can work? So with you on the fact that even though the Guinness is 0%, it can still be enjoyable, can't it?
100%, you know, and before Guinness, it was tonic water. It was just fizzy water. San Pellegrino, I can never pronounce it, but fizzy water. And I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. I
Which
really
is
don't.
good. And that takes an amazing amount of self-control. So you're in the parachute depot, and you're corporal now. You're training, and you're budding as a trainer. You've done 3 more tours, and then what flicks? What just makes you think, yeah, I'm done?
Out the military. The alcohol became too much. This the marriage I had at the time wasn't going well. She was deploying on tour when I was at home. I was deploying when she was at home. So that marriage broke down, and I made some poor choices around that marriage. And I'm sort of looking at my life at the time and thinking, you know, is this it? You know, once again, you know, what have I done? You know, start all of the things, this security net I had around me. I was starting to make these choices, which basically meant that they dropped off. I went for like a factory reset around about 2015. I said, right, okay, well, I'll go and get my all arms commando course. I'll go get the red dagger on my arm as well. Another badge. Need another badge. Need another recognition. Need to go and find a bit more, you know, attention somewhere else. And I'm there, and you know, my kit's laid out, and I'm about a week or two into this course, and I'm second or third in all of the runs. I'm going up and down the rope, and I'm doing all the things, and I'm just stood there getting inspected. Like, what am I doing here? I questioned what I was doing with my life. As a 30-year-old, 31-year-old at the time, standing here getting barked at by some sprog corporal who knows better because he's read the book. And I'm like, staff, I'm going to VW, I'm out. I packed up my stuff and walked off the football pitch. I'd made my decision. But in that questioning, like, who am I, was what was really going on. I wasn't questioning me being on this course. I wasn't questioning my time in the military. I was questioning me as a human.
Yeah.
Is this what my life has amounted to? I've gone and thrown things down the pan. I'm covering up this drink problem. And I had a momentary crisis point internally, VW'd off this course, drove off of camp, and I thought, well, that's it. I'm going to throw myself off around about 120 mile an hour. Just like that.
And that's pretty drastic.
Yeah. And it was a momentary moment of, you know, ideation that thought, well, this is a valid idea. This is a valid answer to the problem I've got right now. because I didn't want to turn to everyone, family, friends, and confront all of this problem. You know, the box I was in was pretty good. I had some really good problems, and I was incredibly good at fixing problems as well.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I said no, and I didn't follow through with that. And I pulled up at the very next lay-by, called us a cucumber, just called me mum for a chat. How you doing? And just asked her about her day, you know, and that was it. And I never told another human being that up until July last year. So this about this time last year.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and you know, hats off to you, bud, because there'll be. I know that when this episode goes out, there'll be someone listening that this can really help, because it's just a difference, isn't it? It's that switch, you know, and you can just say, no, I don't want to do that. The thing is that it can be difficult at times, can't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because at the time I was fine, you know, there wasn't a problem at the time in my understanding of it. I was so narrow-minded in what was going on in life. I can look back on it now with some good reading under my belt and a few qualifications in mental health, and go, grab that guy, he's going off the edge. Someone give that man a cup of tea and let's have a chat. If I could do that with myself, I would, because all of the 3-4, hang on a minute, the 20 years leading up to that point, I was heading towards suicide. You know, I was drifting off course.
Because I mean, let's face it, you've got your wings, your para wings, you've been to all arms commando, right? So the typical alpha male, if you like, and the females as well fit that bill, and you just
but a massive failure at the same time.
Lean, mean, and then you've got this stuff going on. So thank you for that, and I'm really pleased you pulled into that lay-by and had a chat with your mum. So it was around about that time you just said, yeah.
Yeah. So I PVR'd after a chat with my parents. That then ensued the 12-month countdown.
Yeah.
I met my wife at the time. I met my now wife Kate the day after I PVR'd. So I knew I had like this great thing to look after and look forward to. I had my compass bearing again. And then I hit Civvy Street, went on a bike packing trip around Europe, cycled to Rome on a pilgrimage to go and find myself, and then settled into a life of sales out on Civvy Street and selling cars and products and items, because I didn't have the engineering or qualification or sort of like the militarized equivalent to Civvy Street.
Yeah.
Infantry security wise in civilian life is going to private security, isn't it? Or mighty security at Sainsbury's.
Yeah. And that's interesting, because that can be often the stereotypical role that you think you're only fit for. And when we examine the value of the skills in a little while, then we're going to explore that further, because then you moved on to something which actually, me knowing you now, totally fits, where you're getting into business development now, aren't you? And helping with operations, because that's what you've been doing.
Yeah, around about December 2020, after multiple sales roles and different car dealerships, I decided that I'd get a qualification in project management. I'd use some time to do some reading in the background. COVID came along, which kind of scuppered that plan massively. but it didn't stop me on the learning path. So 2 qualifications in project management later, plus change management, a mental health qual as well. And I'm currently in a coaching program as well. There's this digital presence is the company that I formed, limited company, and I'm essentially social media management, building websites, helping people with their sales and marketing, essentially, and putting over the best way that I possibly can my lived experience for human connection, holding gaze, having a story, knowing the product, and just imparting that knowledge on and helping guys and girls with their startup business, mainly from leaving the military. That's my target audience. That's who I want to help with that.
Yeah.
There are, civilian companies that I'm doing it for as well. So that's me right now in that way.
So how do you? Here's a question that is easier to ask than it is for you to answer.
Thanks.
How do you do? Yeah, it's okay, mate. How do you deal with failure? Because you've had your first share of failure. If I'm listening to this now and I'm not feeling that great, right, and I'm not sure who to turn to, when you were in that position, how did you deal with that failure and what pulled you through?
There's 2 answers to this, because there's 2 Toms. There's the Tom pre-Saber Warrior, and there's the Tom now. The Tom pre would have internalized it, doubled down a bit harder. I would have done more to fix the problem, or I would have done better to fix that problem, or I would have done something differently to fix that problem.
Yeah.
Because I had this bravado, I will fix this. I'm protector. I'm alpha. All of that stuff. I will fix this problem. Me. Now, with this new way of looking at life, okay, I'll fail. I'm happy to fail. I'll fail forward, but I won't fail intentionally. I will obviously plan, and I'll look ahead. The military planning model is brilliant in that way. It gives us a great let's look at the next step, and once that's happened, what do we do then, and then, and then, and then, and then bring it back to the start, and then launch. That's something that a lot of people don't have exposure to, and it's in our blood and from the mob. But yes, you can. That's the anyone can do anything. I couldn't run my own business back in 2015, but I can now, because I've bothered my arse to go out there and learn. And yes, I can. Nothing is off the table for me now. And those leaving the militaries, veterans to success, it's either your right shoulder there.
Yeah.
You can drive forward to success, but you've got to be capable and willing to go there. So don't be afraid about making mistakes.
No, and yeah, I think that failure provides a valuable lesson, and I also tell people when I'm working with them, right, you haven't failed until you give up. Failure is okay because it's just feedback, and it's the feedback from champions. And I say, what makes me chuckle? The amount of experts, leadership experts that are on LinkedIn or TikTok or something, and like they're 17, they just finished puberty, or they might not even have come through. And I'm not saying they don't know anything, because it's good that they've got the tenacity to get out there and want to do it. It's just that sometimes, like for guys who are in the military or just got out, you gotta be conscious and wary and mindful of where you're getting your top tips from, haven't you?
Yeah, and I'm not an expert. That's a fact. I'm not
And that wasn't slanted at you, mate. That was
no, I know it wasn't, but you know, the caveat to all of my stuff is I am not an expert. There is another book I can read. There is another expert ahead of me that's down that road. We're all on the road, aren't we? Someone ahead of me. I have a coach and a mentor in my experiential my life through
yeah.
Adam Cornell. He's coaching me in life, and I've also got someone professionally. I've actually got three people that I'm getting advice and guidance and coaching from in different areas of professional development in business and that as well. So if I was that big headed to say that, yes, come here, sit down, I know it all. One, lie, but two, the person that sat across me would go, yeah, all right, kid. And you know, it's inauthentic.
So yeah, well, I think you've ticked the box off where I talk about how important is a good coach and mentor. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's
And
invaluable, isn't it?
it's
Now, go on.
you have to have coaching, you know. Cavemen, boys, before they had the cut and went out into the wilderness, they looked up to the elders of the village. That's coaching. It's imparting knowledge down so that they can then sit that seat. It's that's in its simplest form. That's what it is.
Thank you. And the social and business network as well, because you found the value of that, haven't you? Because in fact, the way we met was on a social network with LinkedIn. I mean, and we've had many conversations now, and it's great how being able to share experiences, skills, wisdom helps you get better ideas, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thoroughly enjoy talking with people, understanding what people's problems are. If I've got a solution or got some advice, I'll give it. If I know someone that can help in that area, I'll put them in touch. It's the veteran network. It's having the humility to say, actually, I can't do that, but this guy can, and maybe give that bit of business away. But really, it comes down to, it boils down to service. I want to serve people still. I might not be in the military, but I want to help people get on,
Yeah.
and have an easier time than I did. And I think if I'm, you know, that comes down to one of my declarations to be a father. It's that fatherhood. It's helping people into making good decisions.
Which is fabulous, and it just shines through because you've shared your experiences, so others can learn from it and do better. So, how valuable do you think, reflecting on all of your experience in the military and before that, because you know you've talked about the 20-year program, how valuable do you think those skills are and transferable into Civvy Street when guys leave the military, men and women?
You can't read that stuff in a book. It's you know, people have tried writing it down, and I think it just, you can read the words, but it doesn't have that punch, you know. It's got to be, you've got to have a special relationship with the person that's teaching that to really understand where it's coming from. And you know, the military, if I ended my time in AFCO London, the same way that I entered the military, I left. And it was a lovely sort of closed loop for me. You know, and I've spoken to many people since that their children are thinking of joining up. And my instantaneous answer, with all of the negative and destruction that I experienced whilst I was in there, absolutely go for it. Most positive thing I've ever done in my life. Do it. Like, and I still believe that I would join up again and experience the same tour, the same tempo, the same things, all of, absolutely I would. Because now, all right, maybe I've not got the qualifications and university degrees and this and that.
Yeah, you got more than that.
Exactly. I've got this ability to look and go, right, I've made my decision. You know, I've got that clarity to go within a split second, just assess what's
Yeah,
going on. I've got 51% of the information. I'm happy in making a decision on that.
yeah,
You know, to quote Barack Obama, but it gives you that decision making
yeah.
switch, you know, and
Instead of having a meeting about a meeting about a meeting that you need to
yeah,
have a meeting about.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's also taught me courageous restraint, you know, to look at a situation that could turn nasty
mm,
and pull a punch before it even is there.
yeah,
Read a situation to not put yourself further into danger. Um, Take my wife from my right hand side because she's got her bag on her right shoulder and
yeah.
calmly put her over here because I've looked at what's going on around and I think
Isn't
there's a
that yeah? Isn't that
just
interesting?
just guard that. And that there is another trauma response to PTSD for me, and it's it's something that I have to try and dial down, but it's also something that's protecting my wife and people around me by me looking at what's going on.
Yeah, and you know when it like say if I go away, or when we go away together with my wife, if I automatically sleep on the side of the bed nearest to the door because
Mhm.
that's where any threat's going to come from. I suppose if there wouldn't be, but if there were, that's where
Mhm.
it'd come from. So yeah, that's yeah. So I'm totally with you on that. I get
Mm.
that. Yeah.
Mm.
So we're coming towards the end, and I mean I could carry on talking for absolute days because I just find it so interesting. I want to know a little bit more about what you're doing now and what the future holds for you because you've taken a bit of a ballsy step really on what you're doing and you've gone all in, haven't you, really?
Yeah, 100%. And I've got a very understanding wife that's working, you know, what the job that she does, and essentially she's the breadwinner. Fact, because I've chosen to dedicate my 80% of my day and my world to getting Save a Warrior off the ground, and further than it is at this stage with the help
Tell
of,
me more about Save a Warrior. What's the mission? What's the purpose? What does it do? And how can people support you?
certainly. So we at Save a Warrior want to essentially stop people taking their own lives through suicide. And when I say people, members of the armed forces, be they serving or veteran members, the police and fire service.
Yeah,
Um, it's it's an incredibly emotive subject. It's obviously one, from what I've said earlier on, something that's personal. It strikes home, so it's an easy fit for me to be in here with my lived experience um, and with the coaching from Adam. We're standing shoulder to shoulder, carrying this flag for Save a Warrior and charging it forward.
yeah,
Um, so Save a Warrior is a 3-day transformational experience where the individual who has volunteered themselves and submitted a form online will come to us and unplug from their home, their world, and their family and loved ones for 3 days. Leave the mobile phone at the door, and we'll reprogram their understanding of trauma and their language around suicide.
yeah,
And knowing that everyone is on the same path, but on different advancements of that path. Some people may just be discovering that they've got PTSD, but haven't got the courage to say the word suicide is there, or maybe it's not, but they're going in that direction. And then some others may be, you know, they've had 2 attempts this week.
yeah, yeah.
True stories. So it's once they're with us, we'll reprogram that knowledge and understanding around where they are right now, and put them in a different box, a safe conversational element where they can talk about what happened.
And I recognize that every suicide attempt has its own story, completely in a different situation. What would you say, what would you, from your experience, identify as the reason? Is it a call for help? Is it a cry for help? Is it that they just want the pain to stop, or what would you, in a phrase, a paragraph, or a statement, what would you say?
Well, it's dangerous to put such a stamp on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Or better still, let's, because obviously we're not diagnosing anything.
No.
If somebody got in that situation and they were doing that, what would you recommend that they do, if that makes sense? And if you,
here's the best way to answer that, the first piece. I mean, so like what happened, you know, taking what happened to that individual in their formative years, something happened to them, you know, and out of love, they take what happened and they hide it from the rest of the world, out of love for the individual that inflicted that thing, you know.
yeah,
And the weight of carrying that through life basically causes poor choices and going off the rails, you know. It's a similar story to what you've heard from me in this, you know, 45 minutes. So that not talking about the thing is what causes this contortion, you know, and I'm not good enough. And we, in a safe environment, show them, not tell them, show them what it is to be comfortable and complete with the thing that happened. By telling them, you know, the words out loud with no fear of the reprisal, because I trust every single person in this room, and I trust this person that's now displaying this thing to me, and I will hold that, what they say, so dear, and protect it for them, and thank them for sharing that level of trauma that happened to them, which is awful. But it's not their problem, it's not their fault, you know. Go on. So, and that happens within the first hour, 2 hours. If you're lucky like me, it happens 5 minutes before you walk into the door and you realize, like, oh, I'm in the right place. For the first time in my life, I was with people that I was like, fuck, this wave of emotion. That's when I started crying, and it didn't stop for 72 hours.
And that's a lovely place to be, isn't it?
Here it comes now. You know, it's those accessing grief and accessing those tears. It was the first time ever. It was that release, and it was with people that had sat in that seat and lived that life and knew everything about me without meeting me. And that's what we provide, you know, this
which is amazing, which is absolutely fantastic. So how can people get in touch with you? Because I think what you do is life-saving and fantastic. So in fact, before I say how can people get in touch with you, what sort of support are you looking for from, because we were talking about support from companies, how companies can get involved and people can support things, because you've got a mission to provide a particular service, haven't you?
Certainly. I mean, so, you know, the 3-day experience, Save a Warrior pays for. The individual turning up doesn't pay for that. They shouldn't pay for that. It's non-transactional. You know, there's just a display of love and compassion. We'll feed them, we'll accommodate them, we'll look after them, and we'll give them a 500-day plan thereafter to follow, with a spiritual guide to look after them for that. And it doesn't, the 500 days, it's not like, ciao, thanks.
No.
they can come back and they can serve and volunteer for Civil War as well. So that where we're funding it through my work through digital presence. That's how we've got there so far. And we've had some charitable donations from some very generous companies.
Yeah.
But we've also got, on the smaller level, those that can sign in and be part of the community and compassion with Save a Warrior. So if you've got a small business and you've got £100 laying around at the end of every month and it's just going into profit and sitting there, you know, you could put a small donation, standing order, to Save a Warrior to sponsor a seat. Now, that seat costs £2.5 grand for one person, £2 grand for the seat, £500 for the 500-day plan. Once we get enough people or small companies to essentially sponsor that seat, they then become that community that holds that seat, you know. So they'll all know about each other, and all of that's details on our website. And I'd love to have a chat with anyone that wants to do it. But we've got businesses that are involved in that. We've got people that are involved with that, and there's no smaller or upper limit to it, but it's a monthly commitment.
And that is fabulous that you're so committed, you're even funding seats from your own profit. So that is going the extra mile and definitely committed. So how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way? There's multiple ways. What's the best, and then other ways?
My mobile number, that's the most direct one. You can find that through my LinkedIn profile. www.saveawarrioruk.org. And for the man or woman that's sat there and listened to it and it's tickled this curiosity switch within them, that same website /apply, okay, read the information on there. There's some very important information there, and then hit the submit button and fill the form out, because you're only one web page and a click away from living your life in a way that you cannot see and fathom right now. It just takes that little bit of courage just to go for it. You will be caught on the other side. You will be caught on the other side.
So that's www.saveawarrior.org.
Saveawarrioruk.org.
Oh, saveawarrioruk.org. Sorry. So www.saveawarrioruk.org.
/apply. That's the
and then /apply to submit your application. That is absolutely fantastic, Tom. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to the Queen and country, and now King. And thank you for the service you're continuing with doing and offering to veterans and blue light services who may have hit hard times and want some help. So thank you once again.
My pleasure. It is my pleasure.
Thank you. And remember, to successful become, visit joeteams.com, where you can listen again on the podcast. You can listen to all sorts of resources. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day. Thank you.